I want to make sure we're on because
We're on, man, live.
are
What's
we?
going on, everybody? Live from Community Beacon.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I don't know what's going on my side for whatever reason, but if you say we're live, I'm gonna take your word for it. I'm gonna take your word for it. Shouts out to everybody. It's Community Beacon. It's Friday. It's pretty early, 4 o'clock. We appreciate you all, those that check in as we go along, and those that check in, get the later show, because it's up. Of course, I am Michael Seville, your real estate guy here in Palm Beach, Florida. There's the brother. And on the other side of the camera, I got my brother from another mother, the incomparable Joel Simmons with the Tenacity Foundation. Last week he was in transit. Glad to see he's still somewhat in transit, but glad to see him sitting still. And I think we have an awesome show going on today, brother, because we do have a guest that we'll be bringing up. Today's show is going to be about fatherhood. I see the title says the power of presence and legacy. I'm excited about the show. I have more questions than answers. I can
Mm,
I can tell you that. I have more questions than I do have answers or statements to make. So I think this show will be
right.
great. I'm excited about it. How about you, brother? Uh-oh. I don't know. I can't hear. I don't have a sound for you.
How about now?
I can hear you now. Perfect.
All right. Yeah, man. No, just I'm definitely excited about this whole process about talking about being a father. I'm a father of three, and there's definitely challenges with being a father. I think we've done this an episode about fatherhood maybe two or three times. So this is going to be a great opportunity. And we also got a guest with us. I think he's going to bring a lot to the table as well. So I'm ready to get ready. Let's rock and roll.
All right. Without further delay, I'll go ahead and bring the guest on, and you can kind of introduce our guest today, brother.
All right, today we have here with us Garrett Forsyth. This is a great guy right here. He's been married to Vicky for 44 years and has three adult children and six grandchildren. He's an engineer by trade and and currently does executive coaching and consulting after a long career with DuPont. He is a sailing fan and has coached youth soccer. He has his wife. He and his wife have led singles and couples
Okay.
groups at church in Pennsylvania as well as Georgia for many years. Now they've relocated to Riviera Beach. He became my neighbor, right? That's how I found. That's how I met him. He's been there for 4 years and had just some time, and also lived a little bit in Lake Park. Before that, he's traveled 49 countries and 49 states with Alaska left to go. He's also my partner in the Inspire Men to Greatness series that we're going to be doing starting in January. That's going to go all the way through June. And we're developing a relationship and program where he's going to be talking a whole lot about EQ. So I believe that the audience, you're going to love him. Welcome to the Community Beacon, Garrett.
Well,
Glad to have you
thanks.
here.
That's great to be here with you.
Yeah, man. So I'd see you told us you're inside of the basement. What's going on? Where are you at? What's happening?
Well, I'm actually up in Atlanta at my daughter's house right now, and I'm in the basement in my son-in-law's office. Just haven't finished out the walls yet. So, when funds allow, then maybe the basement gets done too. But we went through a bit of the hurricane last night. I should have stayed near Riviera Beach because it would have been safer. You don't think that way it's going to work, where the hurricane's going to miss Riviera Beach and hit Atlanta. But I have friends up in Greenville, South Carolina, that had some damage, a lot of damage. Their power's out. My son lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and they had power out too. So we're doing well. I mean, we managed to miss it, so that was good.
Yeah, that is good. My dad's actually in Augusta, Georgia, and the hurricane hit his hotel.
Wow.
laid some trees down on the hotel,
Mhm.
knocked out all the electricity. He told me it was citywide. So he was like trying to make it downstairs through the dark to buy cereal because that was,
Mm.
I mean, nobody's open. So I thought it's strange. I'm very grateful that you're in a safe place and you're with family, but it's a
Thanks.
very strange thing, I would think, to be in a disaster zone far away from home.
Yeah, we were lucky though because Atlanta obviously is in pretty good shape. So north and east of here, they got whacked pretty hard. So I'll be heading back to Riviera Beach real soon, a couple days.
Come on home, man.
Yeah,
Come on home.
I'm
We
ready.
got we got a lunch date.
Yeah, I was about to say you sound like you're ready to get back home. Home is where the heart is, right?
Yeah, but I got grandkids here, so it's fun. So I love
Okay.
playing with them.
So let's get into this topic. And I had a couple questions. And for our guests, Joel, and feel free to answer this question, whoever. My first one is, since we're talking about fatherhood, where did you first learn what it means to be a father?
Ooh, gosh, that's dope.
Danny?
Garrett, you want to answer that one?
Man, that's a tough one. I got a lot of mixed feelings when I start on that one because my dad was a good dad in a lot of ways, but he was also an alcoholic and a functioning one, So I grew up, luckily I had uncles nearby. I had other really good examples. And my dad at times could be an excellent father and at times maybe not so much. So I know when I became a father, I wanted to do certain things that were better and I wanted to do certain things that followed some of his example because in a lot of ways my dad was my hero too. He
Hmm.
flew he flew fighter planes on aircraft carriers during the Korean War, and used to take off of aircraft carriers and land, and so in a lot of ways he was a hero to me, and in some ways he was very strict and very tough. So fatherhood brings a lot of memories. That's a really tough one. A lot of
Hmm.
good ones and a lot that maybe aren't as good. But more
Interesting.
good. We're on the good side for sure.
I'll tell you. I tell you what, man. That's interesting. You mentioned strict and tough, and I want to dive into that right there. But I want to answer Mike. I want to answer your question too, um, because fatherhood was really something different for me. I think that I learned fatherhood by the absence, and um, and I don't mean that in the negative connotation. At least not this time in my life. Um, but I wasn't around my dad. Many of you all know my story. I wasn't around my dad. My dad wasn't around me, and my mom was there, and I had like a stepfather. But it was the absence. It was not knowing him and not knowing where he was, not knowing what he was doing, not knowing if he cared, that made me want to be the best father that I could ever be. It made me want to show up for my children. It developed inside me at a very young age. I'll never forget this. This is kind of crazy, but I must have been like 14, 15 years of age. And, I was sexually active. And I ended up getting with a girl who told me that I got her pregnant.
Hmm.
And the first thing I did was, I like put in my mind, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take care of that kid, but I don't know what to do. So I went to my mom. And I'll never forget going inside of our living room and sitting down in the living room. And my mom's there and I'm there. And I'm like breaking this news to my mother because she was my trusted person. She was my leaning post. So it didn't matter what was going on in life. I knew that if I had something really serious, I could talk with her. And whatever she brought to the table, it is what it is. And she was like, listen, you're going to take care of that kid. I was like, yes. And so I distinctly remember that. It turned out that it was all a hoax. She just wanted to like make sure I was only hers. And it all blew over. The girl was absolutely nuts. She was she was crazy. I mean, she really was. You know, yeah, you know, I just
Well,
went down memory lane, fellas.
yeah, it sounds like it had an effect on you. I'm gonna tell you what's interesting about in both of those stories, and I think a lot of those there's some interesting things that came out of it. One is how, because of our past experiences, possibly the zealousness that we have in regards to our future or how we are, we start to come to these agreements within ourselves of saying, well, this happened to me, and then I'm going to possibly move differently. And so I
Yeah.
think that's going to be recurring in a lot of these different conversations. Whether your father was there, for a long period of time, or whether he wasn't, or whether he had some issues, which we all have issues. Let's be honest about it, and we're all learning through it. And in my case, it was almost like a mixture of the both of you guys' story in regards to alcohol being involved, and you know, I like Garrett was able to just fully say my dad was a functioning alcoholic. If I went back to think about it, I possibly could say the same thing. I haven't really dived into that thought process, but also being in and out. And I love the guy to death, really nice guy now. Spent a lot of time. We were on the phone earlier. I even thought about how they say twice a child, once a man, twice a child, because I almost feel like I'm the conversation we're having now is like, oh, I think I'm raised into this, like we're having these, he's at that stage of life, still
Yeah.
full of life. Let's be clear, he's still full of life, but we're having conversation now where I've become, I'm an adult at this point. But there's like that mixture of it. So I thought that was interesting that these two, both of your stories have it. So we can get into, and you all let me know where you want to go with this. How that got you to be to the father that you are currently, and are, and Garrett, you have more experience than we do because you have grandkids, and we don't have those as of yet. And then we can also get into the what I say, the zealousness, and we can get into the those type of conversations. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right, perfect. So let's talk about the zealousness of how you decided to kind of change or make these little tweaks onto what you thought that was going on, Garrett.
Wow, that's another big question. You know, when you have kids, you learn as you go. I mean, I when I had a daughter first, and so we raised her first, and you learn a lot from your first one for sure. And
Mm.
and the second one, you don't make maybe some of the same mistakes. You learn not to do certain things, and you learn you need to do certain things that you didn't do the first time. So I mean, I could spend hours talking about the lessons of what I've learned in fatherhood. The other thing too is, I also, given the fact that I had some dysfunction growing up, I wanted to be a father where I could to other people that needed to have that didn't have that opportunity. So, you know, when you ask how many kids I have, I could say I have two biological kids, but I have a third kid who's adopted, part of our family. I have another fourth and maybe a fifth if you want to include that. I was a father figure to them because they didn't have a father figure growing up. So to me, it's expand the family, whatever you can do. Because for me, being a father is such a joyful thing to be. I have a son-in-law now too. So your extended family of who you're kind of a father or a father figure to, as you get older, it really grows. So I would recommend for the guys on the podcast and anybody, think of who else you can be a father to, someone who doesn't have a good father figure in their life.
Yeah, that's once again interesting thing, because I my background originally was working with youth in the what they would call disadvantaged youth, and a lot of them came from homes that didn't necessarily have fathers. And like, what
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed is that, I mean, fathers are like the foundation and the structure of the thing. You know what I mean? Like a lot of we'll find as we go through life and we see different things, we'll see a lot of issues that come up and just in day-to-day life is because of fatherless homes. Let's call it that. And so it's I'm with you. I think it's important to go back into the city. Well, or excuse me, go back and work with people. But I guess my question is that how important was it for you to have your home structured first before you kind of went out and started adopting these youth, or was it just like I'm bringing everything in and figuring it out that way?
Probably more the latter. I wish it could. Things were planned a little more than they were, but I think you find out as you raise your own kids all the mistakes that you make. The good things you do, and then the mistake that you make. But there's just so many good resources now too. There's podcasts, there's books, there's mentors, there's all kinds of people. Luckily, I had some good mentors in my life too. I had,
Right.
like I said, I had two uncles that lived nearby that were good fathers. So I could see families that were healthy and what they looked like. And other families maybe were struggling, where the dad wasn't there, or the mom had dysfunction, or there's just things that weren't always going on. So you kind of learn by observing, I guess. One thing Joel and I've talked about before is that your experience becomes kind of your ministry, your lessons you learn. The mistakes that you make, you can hopefully help someone else not make the same ones.
I love it. I love it, man. I definitely appreciate you sharing that right there, because listen, the resources, that's huge. I mean, we've talked about resources so many different times, but people don't understand about the resources. And you mentioned free resources, right? YouTube, just about everybody's got a cell phone now. You get cell phones before you get a car. Guys got cell phones before they get a bicycle. And I mean, so you can just like jump on YouTube or some podcast, and you can stream something from somebody who has gone through many, who has experienced so much and can bring so much to the table. And you can literally learn things. And then you mentioned books. Books are still free at the library. I mean, you just got to go out there, and I think you just need to have an address. That's pretty much it. Long as you have an address or a driver's license or ID, you can go there, get a library card, and you can read books to learn. I have a friend, Liddy Paul, a great lady. She was about to have children. This talks to your preparedness piece that you were mentioning. She was about to have children, and she was like, I don't know how to groom them, to grow them. I don't know what to do. I know nothing about being a mother. So what she did was she went out, she purchased books, and then she went out and got a degree in early child development. I mean, I'm like, when you hear her story, it's like, whoa. I mean, taking it to the next level, right? I mean, you're going to school so that you can learn how to raise your own children. She speaks so well on raising children, and I watch how she raises her children, and it's just a beautiful thing. But it's like that preparedness. And maybe I'm gonna toss this question out there to you two. What do you all think about actually being prepared? Whether you got prepared or whether you think it's a good idea or whatever your thought process is, being prepared and going into fatherhood versus it just happening.
That's a tough one. I mean, I wasn't prepared. I'll be honest. I mean, luckily I married well, so I had a really wise and smart and mature wife who probably was raising three kids, to be honest, not just two. So part of it, I was lucky, smart or lucky, depending on how you look at it. But it takes two. I mean, fatherhood is important, but it's going to take two to do things well. It doesn't always have to be just the husband and wife. It'd be a grandmother, a grandfather. It could be other role models and people. But it, in our case, it took both of us because I made mistakes, and she was able to help me not make those same mistakes again when we raised our second kid.
Hmm.
I
For
love it.
sure.
I love, Garrett, that you mentioned when you were in speaking in regards to your wife about the wisdom that she had.
Yeah.
And not to take away from, I think both of you are kind of learning together, but it's something about a wise woman that you take on as to balance out the entire household. And I'm a big proponent of definitely biological parents being in the lives. I know we got the stepfathers, we got the uncles, we have the grandfathers, so on and so. But I've had so much experience with people who didn't necessarily have the biological parents, and there was always this yearning. There's almost this thing that goes on there. Regardless of how great some of these step parents were, but the piece of the wife coming in and being that and having a wise, like, that adds so much to the fatherhood piece. It allows you to kind of just be the father, to kind of, figure out the father side of it, um on your own. Another thing that you mentioned, I love the book piece too, like learning. Now we have the internet, we have YouTube as well. But there's something about exposure, because Garrett, you mentioned it as well. You said that I got to see what a
Mentors.
family, with through mentor, I got to see
Yeah.
what a family looks like. I got to see. So now you're kind of learning, and to be able to be exposed to that kind of thing is like huge. So I'd love for you to delve into this exposure part, and definitely, let's give the wives a lot more credit than, than they probably would have thought we would have gave them on this fatherhood episode as well.
Not for sure. I mean, our house was always open. So, some of the guys that we knew, my son had friends that were growing up in rough families. So they would hang out with us. They'd take vacations with us sometimes, or, you want to open up your house if you do have that opportunity. Plus for me, when I was growing up, there was families, my aunts and uncles who I kind of saw as another set of parents in a lot of ways. So I had good relationships with some of them, and grandparents that, so it does take the extended family, ideally, for a kid to probably grow up in a healthy way. Because if they don't have that, they're going to be missing a lot. And some kids don't have that. I realize that, But we always try to make our house open. I used to coach youth soccer a lot, so a lot of my son's teammates, I got to be close to them, and sometimes they would confide or have a problem, and they didn't have anybody to go to, so they'd come up to me, and I didn't always have all the answers, but at least, I could let them know, hey, they can trust me, and I'll try to do what I can.
Yeah, and absolutely awesome. That part as well. I know my cousin's saying something. He said, experience one of the best lessons behind the one who left a great example. And I love it. He's actually running a fatherhood group with the Boys and Girls Club in Revere
Wow.
Beach on Thursdays. So if anybody wants to go out and check it out, Thursdays at 6 o'clock, the Boys and Girls Club on 14th Street in Revere Beach. Go check it out. We were there 2 weeks ago. We missed last week or this week out naturally because of the hurricane, but I'm sure next week it'll be on and going again. But my uncle told me, it was interesting. He said, and which is his father, and he said, so he came on right on time. My uncle said, you know what? The relationship that he has with me is different than the relationship that he has with his son, because he and I can have a certain kind, we call it reasoning. We can
Yep.
reason differently, and he probably tells his son the same thing, but it might go in one ear or out the other if they even listen to it. So the ability to have that, so fathers, let's put that into the criteria. Like, it's really good to have a big group of men
Yes.
that they can go
Yeah.
to, because my son probably can go to Joel and speak to him about different things, just like Joel's son will probably come and talk to me about different things, and then Joel and I can communicate about those two different things. What do you think, Garrett?
Nah, totally right. My uncle, my dad had a younger brother, and he was a carpenter, and I used to work for him. I learned, to apprentice under him as I was in high school and even a little bit through college. And I could talk to him about stuff I wasn't going to talk to my dad about. And my uncle just passed away this last year, and I went to his funeral, and the place was packed because he did that for others too. I mean, he was like my second father, and I miss him badly now. My dad passed away several years ago, but when my uncle died, it was another heartbreak because he was, like I said, a second dad. So you can be that to somebody yourself. My uncle took that seriously, and I could confide in him. And while we were working, I was framing houses and learning how to do carpentry work. But we were talking a lot too. So he was paying me to work for him when I should have been paying him.
How about that? How about that? Hey Garrett, you wanna touch on this right here? I thought this was an interesting thing. Um, you know, Clinton was saying my son will speak to my brother about stuff he will never speak to me about. What's your take on that? Because I
That's
mean, when
okay.
I think,
Yeah.
I, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's okay. The fact that he feels like he can do that to somebody is good, because the other option is he holds it in. You know,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't look at that as a bad thing. I mean, yeah, you feel, if my son was doing that to my, someone else, my brother-in-law or something, it would feel kind of weird. I agree. But at the same time, guys need to learn to open up. Most of us hold everything in. I'm good at that. I mean, I don't always open up and share, hold it inside. But if your son's doing that, try to look for the good in it. Look for something that can come positive out of it. And you can sneak ideas, for him to communicate back to your son too. You can cheat a little bit. So that's okay too.
I mean, I like it. I like it to a certain degree. I think that, man, it's really about, like Mike was just saying, his son can speak with me, or maybe even Beethoven, or my son can speak with him. But it's about that circle, right? That inner
Yeah.
circle. It's really about who we bring our children around. And that's going back to the whole mentorship piece that you were talking about
Right.
when you were saying, I knew these men who were great fathers. And it's like, as fathers, if we really want to, create that or curate that type of relationship with our child, realizing that up front, that maybe my child may go through something that they don't want to speak with me about,
Right.
and you start, like, cheat code is kind of like the way you were going. It's like, my cheat code is, hey, listen, you can always talk to Uncle Mike. Hey, listen, and then I put that in my child, and I call it like planting seeds,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Start planting those seeds inside of your child at an early age, so that they know who are those trusted individuals that they can go out and speak with. Because, and then also, just about my own circle, like, I don't get around people that I wouldn't trust around my children. So it's like, I don't do that anymore, unless, of course, if I'm helping somebody, then maybe I might not put that person in the sense of, towards my son or my daughter, as somebody that I want them to trust to go and give all information to.
Right.
These are people. Hey, listen, we're going to go out and do XYZ. We're going to help out these people. These are the people that are on the outer circle. But those people that are on the inner circle, for me, I really try to make it very clear. Also, when I was coming up, I knew who was on the inner circle, because my mother would always tell me this. She would say, hey, you need to put an uncle or auntie or a mister on that, or Mrs. And it was like, everybody had to be family. Everybody had to be family. And if they weren't, then you knew that that's not somebody that was close enough. And so, I don't know. That might be a lost art. Some people out there in YouTube world may not even know what I'm talking about with that. But that was the way I grew up. If these people came in a household and I said, hey, how are you doing? Then my mother would be like, you need to put an auntie on that. It was a sign of respect, but I always knew this
Yeah.
means that this person is closer.
No, we had some of that too. Same exact type of situation. Yeah. Aunt or uncle that wouldn't necessarily be relatives, but they were
Yes.
they were part of the family. They were the inner family. That's right. Same.
I love it. And I love what you just spoke. I always talk about curating our environments, curating, the way that we want our our environment to be, and the people that we want to come around. And so I remember growing up, same thing. It was like, our parents kind of directed us to the people who we can spend the night with, whose
Yes.
house we can spend the night over with, because
Right.
you couldn't just spend the night at anybody's house. and they wanted to know the parents, and they wanted to know where they came from, and if they didn't agree with some of the parents' lifestyles, they'll say, well, no, you can't go over there, but they can come over here. You
Right.
know, they,
Yeah.
like, so it's, I think it's important as us as fathers, just because we're thinking in this kind of fashion, or parents, fathers in this case, is for us to curate our sons and daughters and grandkids to be around these different people in these different environments, and we can kind of, so we can kind of mesh it out, you know,
Yep.
because we know that it's so easy to get caught up in culture, so easy to get caught up in, to be influenced by different things that may not necessarily be good for us. It may seem or look good, however, it's not. And so I think maybe that, so that's somewhat changed in the last maybe 20 to 30 years, for, and there's a bunch of different reasons, but a lot of that has changed in regards to that. And parents, both parents are going off to work, especially when there's not a parent in the household, so the parent doesn't get to see it. But there was a time when your parents knew whose house you were over, what was going on, and then instructed you at that point in time, like, you can't do it, you can't go over there.
Right.
I think there's that has changed within our, last, like I said, the last maybe 20, 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, let me throw this question out there just based off of what you just said right there, because you're talking about it's changed over the last 20, 30 years. This is something important. I saw Clinton totally agree with that. I agree with it. Sound like Garrett agree with that. And I'm
Hmm.
gonna pose this question out to the community as well. But what do you think is an important dynamic in fatherhood that we should be sharing with children? Something that something that's teachable, something that you would want to teach a young father, something that you would want to be passed on, not necessarily legacy bound, but absolutely something that should be traditional, something that should be carried on, something that should not die.
Yeah, to me, the most important thing, Joel, is unconditional love, because most
Mm,
of us, one, don't have it, and two, if our kids feel like that's the case, they can screw up, they can make mistakes, but at the end of the day, you still have unconditional love for them. So
Mm.
that's going to give them the confidence and the willingness to chase integrity, all the qualities you want your kids to follow. I've always tried to do that, and probably haven't done a perfect job of it by any means, but I want them to know, no matter what happens, no matter what they do, I'm going to love them. And I'm still going to, they're still my kid, because I've had, situations where I did things growing up that were pretty stupid and got caught. And with my mom, I had unconditional love, no doubt about it. With my dad, I always felt it was, it was unconditional maybe, but it was a little bit conditional too, if you want to be honest. So as fathers, if we can show that to our kids, then it's going to make a big impact, I think.
Mike, I see you. I see you going somewhere, but I got to ask this question, Garrett. Like, tell me more about that relationship between your father and how you felt about whether it was conditional versus unconditional.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think most of us have had that situation where we feel like life is performance based. If we perform well, then we're doing good. If we
Mm.
don't perform well, then we're not doing good. So, there's an aspect of that probably pops in. So, yeah, I mean, that's a tough one to answer. It really is. You kind of know it when you see it, or you know it when you feel it. Maybe.
Mm.
I don't know.
Performance based.
That's a great question. It's just kind of a tough one to give a quick answer to.
Mm. Performance based. So I guess I wonder then, did it feel like for you, did it feel like there was judgment there, like somebody was holding, like your father was holding judgment, or did you feel like if you didn't do something, then you were less of, or was it just a feeling and it wasn't actually true? Did you find out something different later
Hmm.
on in life? that made you think differently about it?
Yeah, that's a tough one too. I don't know. I mean,
You know, because the the thing is like I feel like, there's the relationship between children and their father can be so strained sometimes. And I think that it's because fathers like present differently than mothers. You know, it's almost like it's cliche, mothers unconditional love. And I mean, it's preached in most places of worship, the unconditional love of the mother. But I don't know, is it different the way that a father loves a child than a mother loves a child? I believe that there's a difference. So unconditional love, what does that look like? you know how does that perform? How does that show up? you know Let me see. Clinton has something else too for us. mm, all of the above can be an answer. mm.
I loved Garrett's answer in regards. Let me, and I see Clinton writing something else. Clint's fully engaged today.
Yeah.
Father and children's first hero. As sometimes children feel the need to never disappoint or embarrass their parents, so they don't want to fall in anything or any way. Fail. I'm sorry. Fail in anything or any way. Absolutely. Embarrassment is huge. When
That's embarrassment is huge.
and we and we get into that, but I want to talk about the unconditional love and some of the things that we fatherhood lessons and I think really have been lost in the last 30 to 40 years um, is that fathers do present differently, and I think it's for the most part, a father wants to prepare his child to go out into the world and be responsible and to avoid certain things. So, so for most fathers, even when we're talking about protecting, let's talk about the protection. We're really list scanning. I don't know how many times you've done it, but when you're in a crowd or you're bringing your wife and kids somewhere, like you're scanning to make sure everything is safe. What's going on? This is a dark alley, so on and
right,
so forth. So we tend to be preparing for the future. Whereas mothers by nature, they're more nurturing. Like, what's today? We need food in the belly today. My kid needs clothes today. The lights need to be on today. Like these things need to happen now. Or they're crying. I need to hurry up and run over there and to take care of them because they're crying. They're hurt now. Where fathers would be like, well, let's see how they work it out because when they go out into this world, the world can sometimes seem somewhat unforgiving. It is, a lot of things are based on results. You go to a job, most jobs will keep you on, but they're looking for, like, hey, what's the result?
right,
What's the transaction? What is the value? We're paying you X amount. What is the trade that we're getting for it? So a father's always is, I think this is the love that a father is giving, is saying, like, how can I prepare this child for the world? Oh, he took a bump, let's see what he does. He
right.
fell off his bike, let's see how he reacts. Let's see, because I know we've both seen our children fall off a bike or do something, and we're like, I hope he's okay, but let's see what he does before you run over there and make a big deal, a spectacle out of it. So this is where that healthy balance comes in, and this is when you have to start to
Yes.
see these homes of where these fathers aren't these fatherless homes. I'm gonna say it again. The balance isn't there, right? So it's more emotionally based and rationally or logically, moving forward, because life once again is unforgiving and can be conditional. People are looking for, what is it that you can do. A father is going to prepare you for that. I think now, with the advent of psychology, and we're going a little bit deeper now, we can be a little bit softer. I really think grandparents are really because I know my father is a whole different person that he was when he was my father, and he tells me the same thing about my grandfather. Like, my grandfather to me was just like the top of the top. And I'm like, and he tells me stories about when he was a kid, like he was scared, like, his my grandmother would say, your father's coming, call him Massa's coming home. And he'd be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, it's a whole different thing. But I'm like, not my grandfather. He just loved me to death. My father's out here hugging and kissing kids and saying I love you over the phone. And that never really happened like that. So I think as we get older, and if we're blessed to have grandchildren, we can say, oh, I'm gonna be a little bit less lighter because that's not my job. That's
Yeah,
the dad. his dad's job. So you need to do it, but take care of it. I know my father like you're being too rough on them. I'm like, who is this person? So yes, I think a father's job is to kind of to prepare. A mother's there to nurture and to do X, X, and O. So there's where that balance comes in with the both of them kind of, to come and raise this child. And so I would say the presence of a father, of a man, or really of a man being a man. This is something I think we need to think about, because it almost seems as if now men say something or make corrections, and now I'm starting to hear more of I feel threatened. I feel, especially from people who were never raised with a man or a father figure in their life. They hear a man start to correct or say something, they're like, "Oh,
It is.
Harry, I'm nervous. I'm anxious about this. He's coming off threatening." And
And
to me, I'm
defensive. Yeah, you get defensive. Yep.
and I'm like, "Hey, he just sounds like a regular person to me." I was in court the other day, and the attorney was saying something, and so someone came off to me and was like, "Oh, wasn't he just being mean to you?" And I said, it really didn't bother me. Like, I'm just like, I've heard worse. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way he is. However, if no one was around that, no one had that kind of correction from a man, they could easily say, "Well, he was being mean and he was
Right.
being, so and so forth." So I think as we go, just to answer the question, some of the things that we can take on and pass on as lessons is that, oftentimes, and I'm hoping, I'm sure there's situations where this is not the case, but I think oftentimes men are just making certain corrections in the way that we do it, warnings or whatever it is, and it may be misunderstood. So the earlier that we get, not the earlier, the man should always be around their children. If this just continues, then as they get older, they won't have this hesitancy. They won't feel as if, this is a threatening behavior. It's just how it's being presented.
Let
Yeah,
me
good
jump in
points.
on that. Let me jump in on that just a little bit, because like I think that was a great way of saying it. And Clinton also, he brought up something too as well. Let me see where it is. Right there. All parents are needed. It is balance. Like scripture, right? Amos. How can two walk together except they agree? One of the great, I think this is so important when we start talking about the balance of the two. And Mike, I think that you really hit the nail on the head when you start talking about the nature or the nurture of the mother and the providing and the preparation of the father, and how it's a different psyche, right? Because I don't know what it is, but like as a man, I feel like I've gone through so much, and like, it's a very difficult world out here. So I've got to be a strong individual, because this world will chew me up and spit me out. Oh, I need to pass that on to my son. I need to pass that on to my children. Like, don't be weak minded, be strong minded. I need to, And so when these little things happen, I'll never forget when my middle child fell in the middle of the field in front of our house. Bow, face plant. I mean, it was dangerously bad, and I was just like, "Don't move, don't move, don't move, don't move." And she popped up. She's like, "I'm okay." I'm like, yes, yes. And it's just like one of those things, because I needed to know that my child can take a hit and get back up and start working again and start doing again, because life is filled with those types of falls, those types of fallouts, those types of situations where you feel as if the entire world just crashed, and you have to have that ability to get up. So the balance of it is so important, because like, if this is the relationship part, this is not fatherhood, this is the relationship part between the husband and the wife, between the mother and the father. There needs to be some type of support system between the two of them, because you play off each other. Like that's the only way balance works, is that there has to be some type of play off each other. If the mother is downing the father in the eyesight
Mm.
or in the earshot of the child, then it diminishes what the father is able to produce inside of that family, and vice versa. You could be fighting a battle that is very difficult to win because of the negativity that is building up. And at any point in time, I mean, if you ask a child, what would they rather have? Someone that stands up and says, hey, you need to get out there and take the trash out, even if it's raining outside. Why? Because it's going to make you strong. I'm telling you right now that, situations are going to come up and you're going to have to go against the odds. And it's like, there's a lesson. There is absolutely a lesson in taking the trash out, even while it's raining, being, disciplined enough to do that, to make sure your work is done, because the day is going to come when your work needs to be done. But then there's also the mother, like, nah, don't go out there. It's rainy. Just come here, lay on my chest. Let me give you some popcorn. Oh, baby, let me take your shoes off. And I'm being hyper exaggerative here, hyper exaggerative. So
No,
any
you're
kiddos that
not
are out
though.
there
You're not. You're
that are
not. You're
listening,
not.
The thing is, the one biggest mistake I made as a father growing up was not always being on the same page as my wife,
Mm.
because kids know how to play both parents. I was a superstar at it growing up, and my kids probably inherited that gene too, because they were good at it too. And I'm watching my grandkids now do the same thing. Literally today, I'm up at my daughter's house and watching the grandkids play. You know, human nature, we know how to do that. It's a bad part of human nature that's just there, and our kids will do it to us. And if we're, as fathers, if we let that happen, we're making a mistake. I made that mistake more times than I can tell you. And in hindsight, that's probably one of the few things I'd change. I would look back at it and I would do differently. So I'd warn all the dads out there, make sure that if you disagree with your wife, don't do it in front of the kids. Go off in a corner, go close the door, and then kind of regroup and say, okay, this is the way we're going to respond. Because kids will, they'll play you. They will play you. And
Huge.
it's huge. It
yeah,
is. And it's probably one of the biggest things that can break up a family, that can, cause friction between a husband and a wife. Um, Warning, I'll throw that big warning sign up in there, don't let it happen to you too, because it definitely happened to me. And, in hindsight, we look back at that and say, wow, we didn't see that one playing out, but it can happen.
yeah,
And it can,
100%.
and it can cause some
100%.
harm too, so dads out there, watch out. Don't get played, don't let that happen to you too.
Yeah, I agree. And my child's mother is not in the household, but I found out pretty quickly that he, and I always say to kids, especially if they're growing up in different households, they have at least three different identities. They got
Yeah.
and probably within the household is they have an identity with mom, they have an identity with dad, and they have an identity when they go out into the world.
Yeah.
so so
Minimum,
yeah,
minimum three.
a minimum of
Minimum.
three. I remember when I was young, I used to cuss like a sailor when I was out in the world. But when my mother came around, it was just like, I was the perfect gentleman.
Oh,
Um,
man. Good God.
I, it couldn't come out. I couldn't curse if I wanted to. It was just not there. So what? So it was. So now with his mother not being in the home, with the first one, I had learned quickly that it had to be over communication because he was playing it. He was at mom's house and the homework I left it at my dad's house, and then he come to my house. Oh, I left it at my mom's house, or that was when I was with my mom, and it was this back and forth. I said, wait a minute, let's put us all on this one, text message or whatever. Let's get us all on the phone or get us all in the room together, and we're gonna have this conversation in regards to what exactly is going on. And then, as you mentioned, if you're not on the same page, and this was something I remember my mother did very well, is that she would never talk about the teacher in front of me. Like if she had to go down to the school and there was a discrepancy and maybe in her mind she felt the teacher was wrong, she didn't let me know that she thought the teacher was wrong, but it was like, oh, go outside and wait for a little bit. I need to talk to your teacher. And
Pretty
then,
smart. Yeah, she's
yeah,
smart lady.
and then
Mm,
rectify the problem. What I'm starting to see now, and I think we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago, is that the parent at the Boys and Girls Club, we're having the fatherhood meeting with Clint that I told everyone about earlier, was that the parents are going down there and having this confrontation with principal and teacher in front of the child.
Mhm.
And
mm,
that's not a child's place. It's like if you have an issue with the teacher, if there's something that's incorrect or something that you need clarification on, is really what it should be. I need clarification on what is going on. Go out there and wait, and let me have this conversation with the teacher, and not for, because oftentimes this child is playing both of you guys. He's playing the
Yep.
teacher and he's
Yep.
playing you. That's the because that's their strength, right? Like they're small, they're younger, and they have to figure out how can I come out on top of the situation. And that's hey, I can play these two adults against each other. So don't make it easy for them, man. That's some key moments.
You
Definitely with
got it.
your spouse. Definitely with your spouse. I saw Kenyatta wrote something. Parents get to know each other's stories and beliefs from their past. Taking the time to truly learn about one another could support how they parent. Absolutely.
Mhm.
You got children together. This is the perfect time to be in alignment.
Yep.
Uh, what else she write? A new page gets to be created outside of the pages each parent's learned and experienced from. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I'm a lifetime learner of relationships. Absolutely, Kenyatta. Appreciate your input.
yeah. Kenyatta, glad to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. That's big right there. Lifetime learner of relationships. Like that's something that needs to be noted. I think that this
Yeah.
conversation we talked about is one of those legacy type of things that needs to be passed on over and over and over through all generations. I mean, and then going, see, I link this piece right here all the way back to what Garrett said in the beginning when he said that I saw good fathers, mentors. I saw good, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but parenting,
Mhm.
I saw that. And I'm glad you confirmed it because it's like, this is what we need to start passing on. We can't allow the TV to groom our children because there's a lot of bad parenting on TV because it sells. And so let's not get this false interpretation of what good parenting looks like, or, let's actually get in touch with good parenting and let's start to develop that good fatherhood, man. I think
Nah, that
that's
point about being a lifelong learner is so important too. I do executive coaching now. I don't work full time anymore, but I still do coaching. And some of the guys that are in their, I'd say, mid 30s, late 30s, they're in a very busy time of life. But I try to make sure that they realize, hey, you're still a learner, even though you're out of school. You're being schooled every day, and at least take a little part of every day or every part of a week to do some learning, whether it's, like I said, podcasts, reading, watching something, mentoring, getting someone to mentor you. But the people that do that are the ones who succeed. They're the ones who work up in their jobs. They have more enjoyable jobs. They succeed in life with their relationships too, if you're a
mm,
lifelong learner. So I think that point was a really key one. If you're not a lifelong learner, you're going backwards. I mean, you either go forward or you go backwards. You don't sit still. You can't sit still.
yeah. And everything is about relationships, isn't it? I mean, everything is about relationships. You have a relationship with your spouse, with your loved one, with your children.
Yeah.
You have a relationship at work, with your employer, with your employees. If you're an entrepreneur, you have a relationship with your clients, with your
Mhm.
customers. Everything is about relationships. The more you can master relationships, the better life will be. And I think I
Right.
was just talking with someone just a couple of days ago, Gary, about the same type of thing. And it's just about actually, it was earlier this morning we had a deep conversation. It was like, listen, when it comes down to my wife, I'm learning every single day. I intend on learning her for the next 100 years, at least 90 years, because I intend to live to be 131. That's just something that my prayer between me and God. Yes, a relationship with yourself. That's number one relationship right there. Many times we skip that one. We skip the one where we're actually relating to ourselves and learning who we are.
Right.
And I think Garrett is expert in EQ, so that's a big thing. Maybe that's something that if you all want to learn more about EQ, you should reach out to him and his coaching agency. Um, I know we're getting ready to wind down. Let me ask Garrett, how can people reach you? Tell us about, the business that you have, how people might be able to reach you, how people might be able to get more information about what you do and how you help people, how you help men.
Yeah, I mean, I do run a coaching business, and some of the coaching I do pro bono for free, some I do for pay. I mean, it's not so much about the money; it's about what I do is try to find people that want to learn.
Mm.
When I find guys and some women too, it's mostly guys. I probably have 80-20 in my coaching career of doing that. But what I seek is people that want to learn, because I can set them off on a path where you can do kind of self-discovery, self-development, as long as you have that, that hunger and that desire to do that. So, I mean, we can put a link in this, Joel, if you want, or Mikey, whatever you want to do. But yeah, my goal is to help people to discover, one, themselves, and two, the desire to learn, the desire to work on themselves through all the resources that are out there. And it doesn't take, a ton of money to do that. There's a lot, like I said, a lot of free resources, assessment tools, things to learn about yourself, your personality, your emotional intelligence, your personal development on leadership or mentoring, or whatever you want to do, whatever your personal goals are and your lifelong goals are. There's a way to get there that doesn't require tons and tons of time and tons of energy and tons of money. So that's kind of this part of my life. That's what I kind of enjoy doing and want to try to do, to help people discover that path.
Mm.
I love it. So how can they get in contact with you? Is it through an email? Is it
Yeah, I got an email. I mean, I can share that if you want on the link. It can either be Forsyth OPEX, FORSYTHE OPEX at Gmail, or
you might have to slow that down for me.
yeah, it's Forsyth, FORSYTHE
Mm-hmm.
is my last name, and then OPEX, because I did a lot of operational excellence consulting, and then at gmail.com.
Okay,
So, but
perfect.
yeah, I mean, you guys can, if you get anybody interested that wants to do that, just let me know. I'll set them on some options. The goal I do is I try to find out what a person, one, wants to try to do, and do they want to invest, or do they want to kind of do it on their own? Because some people are on a tight budget, and I have no problem with that. You can there's a lot of self-development you can do without spending money to do it, to be honest.
I always say it's not or I've heard, and I say it as well, it's not about the resources, lack of resources, the lack of resourcefulness.
Good
So
point.
here we,
Yeah.
so here we have a resource right in Riviera Beach, Garrett, that's willing to set you off on a trajectory to better yourself and better your life, so you can be your best self. So I think anyone who's on here, whether you catch it now or later, definitely reach out to him. I tried to put it in the thing. I'm getting an error on my side, so hopefully you all see it. If not, I'll try to put it in the notes a little bit later on after this.
Mm-hmm.
But Garrett, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your stories, getting somewhat vulnerable here, because it's always
Yeah.
interesting as we talk about our parents and our fathers and our relationships and growing up. And this conversation, I think, has been worthwhile for any and everyone who's been a part of it.
Man, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, and definitely when you get back to town, we'll definitely get together, because I like being around, exposed to like-minded individuals like yourself, and a lot of the things that you hit are the criteria that I look for. So
Yeah, I'm having fun getting to know Joel. We're enjoying our time together.
so awesome. Joe, what
Likewise,
about you?
likewise. I'm having a lot of fun getting to know you too, Garrett. Man,
I
I'm glad that
appreciate
you
it.
were able to jump on. I'm glad you're safe, and your family's safe.
Thank
Definitely
you.
glad about that.
Yeah, that
And
was scary for a lot of people, I'm sure. If you live on the
Yeah.
west coast of Florida, it couldn't have been any fun the last couple of days.
yeah,
Sad.
100%. So definitely, sending our prayers out to all those that are still in distress.
Mm-hmm.
From here all the way up, into the Carolinas, Georgia, Tennessee, all these different places, Alabama, wherever you may have been hit, as well as Florida. And just for everybody that, showed up, we definitely thank you all for being participants in this show and for participating so much. I mean, wow, this was a great showing. So we definitely appreciate you guys, and we're glad to be here with you on Community Beacon.
Appreciate you guys. See you
Yeah,
all
thanks,
next week.
guys.
All right, peace, everybody.